Genesis demonstrates that the family is the central institution of creation. Before government or business or even the church, God made the family. Now, families can be a mixed bag, to say the least. This is what led Zazu to say to Simba in light of Uncle Scar. When you think of crazies in the family, there's one in every family. Two in mine, actually. And they always manage to ruin special occasions. If your family suffers from dysfunction, if it's weird to you at family dinner sometimes that your uncle does and says the strangest things, or if your grandma still doesn't seem to quite get things right, listen, join the group. Even the first families of the earth had dysfunction too. This is where we meet a pair of fraternal twins whose dynamic relationship changed the course of history. In Genesis chapter 25, after 20 years of infertility, Isaac and Rebekah, facing disappointment, are blessed with twins, 2 for the price of 1. And this is an interesting pregnancy because God says to Rebekah, hey, they're not just 2 people in your womb, but 2 nations warring in your womb. And the younger will rule over the elder, and the elder will serve the younger. We meet 2 boys who are so unalike that it's hard to imagine that they are even twins. Esau is red and hairy and outdoorsy and ambitious. He's a hunter. Jacob is refined, sat on the leather couch and watched ESPN, analytical, intellectual, probably grew up hanging around his mother's apron. But he's a scheming conniver. That's family drama. But to make matters worse, the family compounds the drama. I mean, this is a classic story of parents who have their favorites. Rebekah is trying to help God out. She's trying to ease Jacob up in front every chance she gets. Now, parents are not supposed to have favorites. My mother-in-law calls each of her children, all 4 of them, her favorite. They understand what she means. Basically, she's saying that parents have to love each child uniquely, specifically, and differently. But these parents we meet in Isaac and Rebekah, well, they are the epitome of dysfunction. Dysfunction doesn't have to ruin your family. Division, as we can see, doesn't have to split your family. God has a way of bringing about destiny, His wonderful, glorious plan, in spite of your dysfunction and in spite of your division. You should read that story. Somewhere between the pages of Genesis 25 and Genesis 33 is one of the epic narratives that blesses every family. Here's how it started. There was a rumbling, a tumbling in the tummy of Rebekah as she gave birth to one. Oh, wait a minute, here comes the other. The oldest ekes out the win, Esau, but not to be undone, young Jacob is holding on to his heel. Heel grabber, trickster, schemer, conniver. Don't we see that throughout Jacob's life? As a teen, he jacked his brother for his birthright, for a bowl of bean soup. I mean, if you're gonna trick somebody, at least let it be chicken noodle or steak soup. But bean soup? As a man, he's so sophisticated, he tricked his father into blessing him with his mother's help into what rightfully, culturally belonged to his older brother Esau. As a man, he went on the run, fleeing his brother Esau, married the love of his life, Rachel, but only after being tricked himself. This is how life works sometimes. God will let you run into you. Jacob, who had been tricking everybody his whole life, met his match in his uncle Laban, who, after agreeing to work for 7 years, the Bible says he was due to get Rachel. And he worked those 7 years. Can you see Jacob sweating and herding sheep, growing brawn in the evening sun? Every day walking home to his tent, looking at Rachel, saying, she's gonna be mine. But on the wedding night, after he had had a glass too many of his favorite brand of Nature's Nectar, he lit some candles in his tent, turned on some Teddy Pendergrass, and got ready for the evening he had been waiting for. When his uncle Laban had walked to his tent, his older daughter, Leah, instead of his younger daughter, Rachel. And in that moment, well, Jacob didn't know what was going on. The Bible says he woke up the next morning. The morning after, he looked, and it was Leah. He marched on over to his uncle Laban. He said, man, you tricked me. This, friend, is what I want you to see. That sometimes God will let you run into you. And disappointment and dysfunction meet up here in Jacob's life. Well, Jacob agrees to work another 7 years, ends up getting Rachel. She must have been fine, because the Bible says she was beautiful of both face and form. And if the Bible say you fine, well, let's just say Jacob was working for another 7 years. But injustice heaped upon insult and insult upon injustice starts to cram in and close in on Jacob's life. Jacob goes into another one of his schemes. He breeds the sheep in a crossbreeding kind of way. Stripes and dots spot the sheep that belong to him. He tells his uncle Laban it's time to go now, and he rushes off with 2 wives, 2 handmaids, his 11 children, and a number of sheep. And in a scene something like this, one night at the ford of Jabbok, a geographical low moment, Jacob hits a physical and emotional low moment. He has to swim his family across the Jabbok, one child after the next. Exhausted and weary and wet, he comes to lay down on a stone. It's a rough life when a stone becomes your pillow. And as he's easing into this low moment, an unidentified assailant grabs him, picks him up, and throws him down to the ground. Now, whatever you want to say about Jacob, he's no chump. He gets back up and he starts to fight. He's going back and forth, but this is no ordinary man with whom Jacob is fighting. We learn in the post-fight interview, when the microphone is stuck in front of Jacob, who it was. Jacob says, I wrestled with God that night. There, as Jacob is wrestling, he cannot overpower the man. He cannot win. And so Jacob learns how to lose. He holds on to the man. And the man says, let me go. Daybreak is coming. I can't be caught in these parts when daybreak comes. And Jacob says, I won't let you go till you bless me. Go on, Jacob. Say it how you feel it. He knows that there's something that this one with whom he is wrestling, who is more powerful and stronger and mightier than him, has something to give him. And then you and I learn from reading this, that we win with God by losing to God. We come up by going low. Sometimes God will wait until life's low moments to initiate change in your character and to demonstrate redemption in our lives. But I'm glad that's not how the story ends. There's another moment that's awaiting Jacob. It's a conversation of blessing. The man says to Jacob, Jake, what do you want? He says, I want you to bless me. He said, well, what's your name? He says, my name is Jacob. You can almost see Jacob dropping his head at this point. When he was with his father last, he said, my name is Esau. But now he's identifying himself. I've been a trickster, a schemer, and a conniver. And the man says to him, no longer will you be known as Jacob, but now you'll be known as Israel. For you have striven with God and have won. And friends, this is when Jacob renames the lowest moment of his life to the highest point of his life. He calls the place Peniel. For I met with God face to face and I won. And we see Jacob. All he can do from this point is win. And that's the story of any family, of any people who would but trust God, who will lean back and rest upon him, who will cast their weight upon him, who will trust him with all of the details of their lives. In that moment, you start to win, and your family has a major come up. You can win with God by surrendering to God.